There is a huge difference between being busy and being productive. I know over the years I've struggled with it myself, and I know when I ran my plumbing company, I certainly was doing a lot of things in the day-to-day running of that company that I should have been doing differently, which later I've learned over the years. In today's podcast, we are talking about how to be productive in your trade business. It's the first part of the How to Escape the $1 to $3 million Nightmare Zone with my co-host, Rob Kropp from Pravar Group. This is an amazing series, guys. Rob has a brilliant program where he basically takes businesses that are in that $2 million mark and takes them up to 10 plus. He's an incredible educator, and actually this has been recorded as a live training as well. So you can head across to the show notes for this podcast, which is thesiteshed.com/blog/productivity, and you can see the live training there, so you can actually follow along. I encourage you to do that, guys. It's made a huge difference in my business, and I'm sure it will in yours. So get across there and check it out. If you learn anything from it, or if you benefit from it, which I know you're going to, please do me a favor, go and share it with somebody that will also get value from it. And if you've got 5 minutes to leave us a review across iTunes or Spotify or YouTube or Facebook, then that'd be great. We'd much appreciate that, and we will read that out in an upcoming episode. Okay, let's jump right in. For all of you book enthusiasts out there, I have started creating a book review for you. It's a YouTube channel that I've set up through the Site Shed, and every book I read, I actually do a review, and then I post my thoughts and my key takeaways on that for you guys. I know you're busy out there, and I know you don't always find time to read, although we all should. So the purpose of this channel is to give you guys enough information about the book that you can make up your own call, whether or not you want to go and read it yourself. Anyway, you can find that through the Site Shed's YouTube channel. It's got a separate playlist there that's been set up just for that. And we will be launching those and announcing them, of course, in the newsletters that come out every week. So if you want to get a bit of a curation as to what's been going on throughout that week, whether that's podcasts or book reviews or upcoming events or whatever else might be going on, you can head across to the siteshed.com and you can sign up for the Toolbox Talks, and that will be sent out to you. So it will land in your inbox and you won't have to go looking for it. Okay, that's all. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys, and specifically Tradie Web Guys' new content creation program. Now, guys, I don't really get that excited very often about products and solutions that we release across at Tradie Web Guys, but I've got to say this new content creation program is absolutely incredible. I'm talking common practice here for the clients that we're working with is to have their content ranking within the first page of Google organically within 1 to 2 weeks. Like, it is insane. Of course, it serves as a double-edged sword. It's there so you can communicate the caliber of work you do to your customers, but the search engine results we're getting from these projects is just mind-blowing. I cannot believe it. Anyway, guys, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/content-creation. You can get to it through the homepage as well. But I really encourage you to fill the form in, guys, and see if it will work for you, because I can tell you now it's working for all of our clients and they are loving it. Go check it out.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello there, listeners, and welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones, and you're joining me for the first part of a series with my co-host here, Rob Kropp. Rob, welcome.
G'day, mate. How are you? Welcome. Thanks for having me.
So, mate, today we are kicking off the series that we've taught, How to Escape the $1 to $3 Million Nightmare Zone and Reclaim Your Business and Personal Life series. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I can't wait for today. It's going to be great. There's so much value we're going to add to the listeners, because it is a nightmare zone, and it's a spot that so many trades and construction business owners get stuck at. So can't wait to get stuck in and teach a lot of content.
So, Rob, you're from Pravar Group. You're based down in Melbourne. You guys operate all around the country. I'm not even sure how we got introduced. I'm pretty sure it was through somebody in my community. I was trying to nut that out this morning. I was down at the coffee shop. Who was it?
Yeah, it's actually one of my clients who's in your community. He's like, "Oh, you got to get in amongst this community. There's so many good guys in here, and make sure you get introduced to Matt, because he's a good guy." So it's been great to be in the community. You've got a great community amongst it. It's good.
Yeah, no, and it's great to have you in there, because I think since that's happened, we've had a number of conversations, and I'm like ridiculously impressed with the way you guys operate. Like, it's such a good program. And for any of the listeners out there that want to find out more about that, you can head across to Pravar Group. That's Pravar group.com. And so I mean, do you want to just explain a little bit about, I suppose, before we get started on part one of this series, a little bit about Pravar Group and a bit about your background and a bit about what you guys do, mate?
Yeah, so at Pravar, we're a business coaching business, and we're based here in Melbourne. I've been in Melbourne for the last few years, and prior to that, I was up in Queensland in Brisbane, so I'm a Brisbane boy, and been in Melbourne for a while. But we got clients all around Australia. I've got a couple of coaches around me. There's 4 of us in the business, so we're a very well-established coaching business. And where we sit in the market is we specialise in helping trades and construction businesses all around Australia. Really, those guys doing over $1 million to really unlock constraints and really help them really grow their business, make more money, get their time back, and more importantly, reconnect with their families. And that's something that's really near and dear to us, and very, very important to me and from where I've come from my own story, but also very much in our clients' worlds. We love helping our clients get their businesses transformed, their life back, and really connecting with their families again because of the pressures that they experience in business. So it's very near and dear to our heart, that's for sure.
It's interesting because I know, like, when we've spoken before, you've talked often about this nightmare zone and how businesses will often struggle when they get beyond the $1 million, $1.5 million mark. And I know you've shared with us a few of the frameworks that you've got around getting people beyond that. So I think it's going to be super valuable to all the listeners out there. Even guys, if you're listening and you may not necessarily be at that point yet, inevitably and hopefully one day you will be. So I think definitely take note. And you can always refer back to this if you need to. So it's super relevant to you guys wherever you are in business. Now, Rob, so we've broken this down into 3 episodes, which is pretty typical for the Site Shed. The reason we do that is to make it digestible, and we just want to keep each episode singular and to the point. We don't like giving mixed messages. So in this series, the first episode is called Productivity, and it's how to be a master of it, not a slave to it. The second episode is about performance, leveraging through effective people power. And then the last one is called is about profitability. So it's how to get your financial house in order. Now, I know you've preached the 3 Ps in the past. Do you want to talk a little bit, just a general overview as to these?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why we talk about the $1 to $3 million nightmare zone, because this is a real transition point for any trades and construction business owner. And if you talk to any business owner in this spot, it's a real space that they get. I find that they get stuck to. I find that any business owner can work pretty well getting to $1 million, and that's just off pure hard work and grit and determination and really busting their balls to get there. But once they hit a certain size in business, really what got them there isn't what gets them to a whole new level. And a lot of business owners try to scale their business beyond $1 million with the same old thinking of when they started their business, when it's a whole real transition point, not only for the business, but for the business, more importantly for the business owner themselves. It's a whole different way of thinking and operating. So we find that a lot of business owners get stuck here. And what we've been able to do is distill it down into those 3 Ps. And what we call it is the 3 Ps of foundational growth, because it helps them get their priorities in order, helps them build out performance through their team, and helps them get their productivity in place. And I think that that's what sets us apart in compared to a lot of other coaching businesses, because when other guys get to engage a coach, the coach is like, right, let's grow, let's get on, let's really scale your business. But I'd rather get the foundation set, because like when you're building an apartment block, is why build an apartment block on shaky foundations? Why do it any different to your business? You got to get that foundation set and locked in before we start adding layers of growth to the business. So that's what today's series is all about, are those 3 Ps of foundational growth for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know when people think about, business coaches and all this kind of stuff, one of the first things they navigate towards is leads, marketing, increasing sales and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, your program's a testament to it. And it's what I've learned lately is it's so heavily leveraged and dependent on the structure. And I know we've just been putting so much emphasis lately on, org structure and systems and processes and all that kind of stuff, which you guys do. Because, you can, once you start, if generating more work is often a massive problem if you haven't got those foundations laid.
Absolutely. And that's where we'll unpack it in the 3 Ps today, because in the productivity P that we're going to talk about, I'm actually going to bust open the myth is that the longer and harder I work, the more money I'll make. And that's a lot of the mindset that a lot of trades and construction business owners have is got this mindset that if I just work harder and longer, then I'll just make more money. But it's actually, once you hit a certain point in business, you can know it's not about how hard and long you work. It's about how well you lead. And that's what I want to talk about in our first P today. And then the second P around performance is all about how do we get our structure right? Because the truth is to be able to build a great business that does give you that time and leverage of profits and that freedom that a lot of business owners chase, you've got to build a team, and you've got to have your structure right, because otherwise there's only so much we can do as business owners and the trades and construction guys. There's only so much they can do, and they wonder why they work 60, 70, 80. And I've seen some clients when we start working 100 plus hours a week, and it's like, man, no wonder your life is being destroyed and your relationships are down the gurgle and you never see your kids. It's like the amount of hours you're working is because you're trying to do it all yourself because you don't have your structure right. That's what's killing you. And then the same thing with the profitability side of things is, if we'll also bust open that myth today, is that more money will make my money problems go away. It's just so not true. That first of all, we've got to really lock in all the holes in the financial bucket before we start scaling, because if they engage guys like yourself, is if you just keep throwing more leads in the top and more sales in the top, and you've got all these cash flow problems where they're at, I find that a lot of that marketing effort is wasted sometimes because they don't get it optimized, because they're just flushing money through the business because it's not all dialed in. So yeah, marketing and sales is absolutely important, but to be able to maximize the opportunity from that marketing and sales, you've got to get your structure right for sure.
It's interesting, it's a slight tangent, but I know that it's a realization that I had, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago or something, with a lot of the guys that were coming to us, and they were coming saying, we need more leads. And I was like, okay, that's great. But then when we had a look at the business, that they had like one of those holes in the bucket that you were speaking about was the fact that they were, happy to spend money on marketing, but it wasn't helping them get any further ahead. And the reason was because they were so shit at retention. And they'd have like these databases of thousands and thousands and thousands of customers, which they never engage with. They would just have that churn and burn mentality. And since then, I've presented that topic from stage. I've got courses and stuff all built on it and all the products built around it, because some of these guys had 30-odd thousand customers on their database. They never sent an email out. And it's like, man, you guys are nuts. You and I both know, you're 8 times more likely to retain a client than gain a new one. So I think it's a bit of a paradigm shift for a lot of these guys. And I don't know if that falls into what part of the 3 Ps that might fall in in your program, but it's certainly something that I experience a lot with a lot of the people we speak with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the essence of today is all about, is first and foremost is when you get to this $1 to $3 million zone, it's actually not about doing more. It's about dialing in the business's structure so then you can do more. And that's what you're talking about there in the marketing is, if you've got 30,000 people in your database, why don't you go and nurture that whole database and optimize the hell out of that before you try and just keep doing more and more and more? Because if what you're doing at the moment, if you don't have all that dialed in, what's the point in going and doing more? Because you're not going to maximize what you've got from the assets that you've already got inside of the business for sure.
Yeah. So typically to me, recording a podcast, for one, I don't know what it is. It must be like some intuition or something that goes on. But every time I do it, one of the neighbours wants to get a chainsaw out and chop down a tree. I'm surprised there's any trees left in the neighbourhood. So if you can hear some chainsaw in the background, it's one of my jerk neighbours. I swear they sit there with binoculars and go, oh, look, he's recording again. Let's go get the chainsaw out. Anyway. So we may as well jump into the first first episode here, Rob, which is productivity. Be a master of it, not a slave to it. Now, in this podcast, are we talking here to, well, in this episode specifically, are we talking here to business owners, managers? Like who's it directed at, really?
Yeah, so this is directed at the business owner.
Yep.
And this is about, and this is specifically to those guys who are transitioning to the $1 million mark, but more importantly for those guys who are stuck at that point in the $1 to $3 million zone, and it's for the business owner.
And right, productivity is like a pretty broad term. So is there like a certain area of productivity we're going to be talking about today, or is this just like a generalization on how to be more productive within business?
Yeah, so this is actually about helping the business owner get their own personal productivity under control and understanding what are their priorities and what have they've got to actually focus on to be able to get themselves working at the right level so that they can then focus on the areas in business which are actually going to enable growth. Because a lot of the business owners that we meet for the first time is they've hit a plateau in business. Their common symptoms are they've hit a plateau in business. When they look out there in the marketplace, there's not a lack of opportunity. So they're looking at there going, there's plenty of opportunities. There's so much work out there, but they've hit this point in business where they're working 60, 70, 80 plus hours a week. They're stressed to the eyeballs because of the amount of, they're in firefighting mode. They're constantly reacting to problems. Their team's pulling them in multiple different directions. They're moving from site to site to site. They're sitting up at night time doing paperwork and bookwork, and they might have an admin person or a bookkeeper and maybe some operational support around them. And they thought that by growing their business that they'd actually get more time back, but it's actually done the opposite. And it's actually destroying their time, and they're working more than ever, even though they've got people around them. And it's actually really impacting their personal life and their relationships and their health and well-being in themselves. So today's P is all about, well, how do we actually get ourselves structured right? And how do we get our own thinking to where we've got to change that thinking where it's not about me trying to do everything. It's all about how do I leverage more and how do I lead more and how do I get the best out of my people rather than just trying to do everything myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a bit of a fine line between this podcast and then the following podcast we're going to be talking about, which is leveraging through effective people power. So I'm curious to see where and how that differentiates.
Absolutely. They're all intertwined. And so this is where it's important, where the listeners not only listen to productivity, but then productivity is going to then help them understand, well, who is it they need to leverage through? And then whilst we're doing that around the profitability, we've got to make sure that we don't just hire all these people at once, because that'll actually destroy your business. We've got to make sure we get your profitability dialed in to be able to fund the leverage. So all three topics are actually all intertwined. So it's really important the listeners all listen to all three to make sure they put the whole piece together.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, so let's talk about, I suppose, the reality of, or why don't we start with this? What are some of the common, I suppose, scenarios that you see with business owners that come to you in the sense of them maybe not being as productive as they can be, or just being completely unproductive?
Yeah, absolutely. The common one is that most business owners, they have this mindset that the longer and harder I work, the more money I'll make. And that's the common mindset that we speak to any business owner. When I first meet them, I'll say, mate, tell me about your world at the moment. They're like, Rob, I'm working ridiculous hours. And I thought that, if I just work harder, then I'm going to make more money. Now, I'm not negating the importance of working hard. To be successful in business, you've absolutely got to work hard. But when you're in startup mode, you've got to bust your balls and you've just got to do everything to shake every tree to get your business out of the ground. But it gets to a point in business where it's not actually about how hard you work. It's about how well you prioritize, how well you leverage, and about how well you lead. And what business owners do is they get to a point in business where they try and scale their business with the same old thinking. And what I mean by that is they think that no one's as good as me. It saves me time, it saves me energy, and it saves me money if I just do everything myself. And they get to the point in business where their business caps out in growth because they personally cap out in growth, because they're constantly doing admin work, they're doing bookkeeping work, they're trying to run their guys, they're trying to win work, they're trying to do marketing, they're trying to do sales. When you ask them what they're doing, they're wearing multiple hats across the business. And because they're capped out in time, their business caps out because they've got the mindset that if I just keep doing more, then the business is going to grow.
Yeah. If I'm off track here, reel me in. But does this tie in kind of to, I mean, I've been banging on for months now and to both in the podcast and in the community about the importance of having like an org structure and understanding departments, the roles within the departments, the responsibilities within the roles, and sort of task allocation, all that kind of stuff. Does it tie into what you're saying there?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first things we help our clients understand is that time management is actually a myth. It's all about priority management. And that's what the essence of this topic is all about, is because time absolutely manages itself. Everyone's got 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, 365 days in a year. And so time doesn't need managing. The reason why most business owners plateau and they get to the point where they start spinning their wheels and get stuck within their business is because they're focusing on the wrong priorities, which are going to enable growth.
Yep.
And leading back to your topic there around org structures is you're right. The reason why they can't get to the next level and they hit that nightmare zone is because they don't have the right operational structure around them to actually take on more work and execute it at a profitable level.
You know what was interesting to me was, and I experienced this a number of years ago, because we went down that whole path initially of, get off the tools, do this, do that, get off the tools. And then a lot of the clients came back and they said, well, and then we went through this exercise with our customers. This was actually through a workshop that I found this out. I was running, and we went through this exercise, and it turned out that the majority of people within that in the workshop there, especially the guys that do like project work, like a lot of the builders and a lot of the guys that do like the construction sort of style, plumbing, electrical, that kind of thing. Like they said that their time, it turned out through this exercise at the time, their time best spent was actually being the guy on site. And it was interesting because I don't know why I had this mindset all those years ago around, well, everyone wants to get off the tools, but it's not always the case. And a lot of my clients and a lot of guys that are listening to this will be a testament to the fact that their time best spent in their business is running the jobs and is out there keeping the guys in order and is out there dealing with the builders or the principal contractors or the customers or whatever it is, which means that, as we found out, what they need to offload is all the other stuff, the office management, the marketing, the sales, and all that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting reality check for me.
Absolutely. And we find that for a tradesperson to get to $1 million, it generally means that they're primarily off the tools. They've got a crew of about maybe 4 or 5 people around them. And so they've got the ability to leverage off the tools. Maybe they're doing a little bit of work there, but when you start migrating to $1.5, $2 million, you're absolutely off the tools, unless you're being dragged back out on site for whatever reason. And so most trades and construction guys they principally know how to leverage. And so they get to the point where they're finally off the tools and they're managing guys around them. But then this is where the problems start, is because all of a sudden they go from doing everything on site to doing everything in the operations. And this is the hardest transition point for a trades and construction person to have, because all of a sudden you're hiring overheads. And guess what? Overheads cost money. And if you want to hire a supervisor at $100,000, it's not just about going and making $100,000 in sales to cover that person. If you're running at a 25% gross profit margin on your work, you've actually got to do $400,000 in sales just to pay for that bloke. And so there within lies part of the problems, because they're tethering on that break-even point. They've got cash flow problems. They're like, I know I've got to hire someone, but how am I going to afford it? Where's the money going to come from? I've already got cash flow problems. And then the fear starts arriving. It's going, well, hang on a second. Now I've got to put someone in control of running my business for me. I've got to hire an operations person to run my sites for me. I've got to hire someone to do my pricing. And so then all of a sudden, all the fear starts bubbling to the surface, where it's like, I trust my guys on site because I know if I've got them on site, they're going to make me money. But then all of a sudden, now I've got these people who are costing me money, and now I've got to arm them with the responsibility of actually running parts of my business for me. And for a lot of people, that means relinquishing control and delegation. And this is why people have this mindset that I've just got to do everything, because it's actually, they either A, don't know how to delegate, or B, they're generally scared of letting go, because that means relinquishing control of the main parts of their business.
We interrupt this podcast today to talk to you very quickly about Tradie Web Guy's content creation program. That program has been designed specifically for trade-based organizations as a way that you guys as trade business owners can start creating content that enables you to engage better with your customers and your potential customers. It will enable you to build trust and build rapport, because what you're doing is you're investing in educating them. Biggest problem that we see with our customers today is that they're not regularly updating their websites. And that's a problem, because first of all, the search engines are looking for that. And second of all, potential customers are also looking for it. Tradie Web Guy's content creation program has been specifically designed to help you get regular, relevant content on your website consistently every month. We know that it's hard when you're out there on the tools, and we know that sometimes you don't always have the time to be able to do these things yourself. So we're taking it off your hands for you. It's a service that we're offering for you guys. We want to make sure that you're getting this done because we know how important it is. Anyway, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/content, fill in the form, and one of our representatives will come back to you. It's interesting you say that. Like, I remember a couple of years, well, just going back probably 4 or 5 years ago, one of my clients down in Melbourne, actually, they were in that sort of growth stunt phase that you're talking about. And the realization that came to him was because he knew, like, he didn't want to be the guy in the office, but he knew that he had to have the guy in the office. So he went and found a CEO. And since he did that, the business took off because he could focus on doing what he was doing on site. The CEO did what he had to do. And as a result, everything started moving. So he wasn't actually, like when I say on site, like he was out on, bouncing around his various sites. He wasn't swinging hammers as such, but he was certainly running the jobs and sort of keeping an eye and, keeping the team morale, all that kind of carry on. So yeah, that sort of rings home pretty true to me.
When we get into the second P around performance, we'll talk about the difference between craftsmanship and tradesmanship, and we'll make sure we talk about that because as a business owner, there's a lot of people who they've got a craft, and that's what makes them special. And so it's about understanding, well, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and what do you really love in business, and how do we build a team around you so you can focus in on what your actual craft is, and then how do we delegate the tradesmanship of stuff around you. So let's make sure we talk about that because that's the essence of really building a high-performing team around you.
So back to productivity, I'm just curious now, why don't we talk about some, I suppose, frameworks that listeners out there or viewers, if you're watching this, could implement in order to make sure that they are spending their time in the necessary places within their business?
Yeah, great one. I know that one of the first things that we get our clients to do, and it sounds really simple, but it's actually really powerful, is we get them to do the first thing we help them understand is the mindset shift, because the first thing that they have to realize is what got them to this point here is not going to get them to the next level. And they have to understand is that in order to get to the next level, you've got to leverage, you've got to build team in around you. And more importantly, that's operational structures more often than not. It's not about, yes, you've got to put more guys out in the field to be able to execute the work, but where most business owners get stuck between the $1 to $3 million mark is operationally they're structured incorrectly. And so it sounds really simple, but we get them to do a time in motion study for 2 weeks. And clients are like, oh, you want me to track my time for 2 weeks? Absolutely, because at the end of that 2 weeks, what we want to be able to do is put it on a nice little pretty pie graph for you to be able to show you where all your time is going in a week, whether it be 60, 70, 80 plus hours a week. What that helps the client do is to help them realize why their business is plateaued. And that's generally a real aha moment for a client where they go, oh shit, no wonder I'm not actually moving ahead. I'm actually spending 20 hours a week doing admin work. And most people just go through the motions in businesses where they have 50 missed calls a day, they'll have thousands of emails, they're doing bookwork at night, and they just go through the motions week in, week out. They don't take the time to stop and actually assess where their time is going. And so by stopping and reflecting and actually documenting every hour where your time is going and where you're spending that time actually forces the business owner to be able to go, right, I'm spending this much time on admin, this much time on bookkeeping, I'm spending this much time on operations, this much time on chasing work. And then notoriously what happens is there's no time left over for actual business improvement. And there within lies the problems of why they're not actually growing their business and why it's plateaued. And so at the end of that 2 weeks of that time in motion study, then that's generally the lever or the strategy that we play in coaching to be able to go, right, now we know what person or system that we need to be able to implement in your business, which is going to restructure your business to be able to give you that 20 hours a week back.
So how do they go about tracking that? Like what sort of framework would you use? Is it like an alarm that goes off every hour and they write down what they've done, or like how does that look?
Yeah, some people. I'm a bit old school, mate, and I like a pen and paper. So it's. I'm sure that there are some great apps there that might be able to do that, and no doubt there's some more technically minded people out there that can help us out. But for me, I just get our clients to document their time during the day. When I was an accountant, we have to document it every 6 minutes, so we don't expect that from our clients. But I just get them to document their time and then tally it up, and we've got a nice little template that we just get our clients to punch in, and I'm sure I can share that with you, where they punch in their time, the dollar value of what that activity was, and I often joke with clients to be able to tell them they're generally the most overpaid admin assistants or bookkeepers out there, because trust me, when you're spending 20 hours a week doing admin work, you could pay someone $30 an hour to do that. That's $600 a week. I would rather clients spend 20 hours a week chasing work and managing their sites better, because that's what's going to get them to the next level, not actually doing the admin or doing the bookwork work because they think it saves them money. It's actually a really false economy when they're spending all those time in the low value activities.
It's interesting that one of the realizations that we've had through doing all this, the department's roles, responsibility side of things is so much of those responsibilities that we get caught up in day to day can also be automated through technology. I found that really interesting. I mean, like, you can hire people to do it, or you can buy a program that might cost you $50 a month to do it.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's a person and sometimes it's a process. And sometimes it's a combination of two. But it's initially in this process with the business owners to help them realize where's their time going. Because I want to repeat again, the time isn't the issue. It's the prioritization of the priorities, which is the real key element of why business owners get stuck, is because they get caught doing rather than leading and managing and growing. They're in a doing phase. They've got a doing mentality. We've got to remember, these trades guys have come, and construction guys have come from being principal doers. They're hands-on guys. They're naturally, before they got into business, how did they make more money? They worked an hourly rate. When they wanted to make more money after that, they did overtime, or they tried to get bonuses. So the mentality of a lot of trades and construction people before they get into business was, if I just keep working more, I'll just keep making more. And so absolutely, that's early on in the phase, but we've got to lose that mindset, and we've got to get rid of this mindset that it saves me time and energy and money if I do it myself. Going back to that admin example, is most people think, well, if I just bog in and get that admin work stuff done, it's going to save me time. But the truth is that better off recruiting someone there and spending the $600 a week to put them on for 20 hours a week, and then utilizing that 20 hours a week to actually focus on business improvement and growing your company.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny, we had a conversation in the group only last week, and it was somebody, I think they were relatively new in business, but they were saying, are there any frameworks out there that we can use to manage our finances? We don't want to invest in programs like Xero yet. And I was just like, you guys are, if only then, I mean, it's so relevant to what you just said. Like, Xero will cost you $50 a month, and it will save you hours upon hours upon hours upon hours of time, in which in that time you could be out there, chasing work or following up quotes or whatever it might be, like productive stuff, that's one program.
Absolutely. And another analogy and another framework that we use in coaching, which will help the listeners, and I'll make sure we get a link up under this video, is there's a great little video with an analogy called Rocks, Pebbles and Sand. And it talks about how someone's got a jar, and the jar represents your life or your time. And most people put the sand in, which are the things that are unimportant to you. And this can relate to business and life. And they say that the rocks are your business and your family and your fun and all the things that are really enjoyable to you. And most people tackle life by putting the unimportant stuff in first, because it screams the loudest. And this goes back to the old Stephen Covey's urgent versus important. And everyone's throwing all the urgent shit in the jar, which is the sand, and then they put the pebbles in, and that reflects all the things it's still the important stuff, but it adds no real value. And then when it comes to spending time on the things that really mean the most to them, whether it be growing their business or with their families or with their friends, there's no time left in their day, because they've just jammed their week of their day full of unimportant stuff, which is just screaming the loudest in their world. So we use that analogy in coaching, and it doesn't matter if we coach someone for 3 months or 3 years, we always refer back to rocks, pebbles and sand, because what I love about that analogy is it helps business owners put a framework around what's important, because rocks are the things that increase capacity or unlock opportunities in their world. Pebbles are still important, but it maintains status quo. It's the important things like quoting, estimating, invoicing, getting jobs done. Sand is all the unimportant things which add no real value. And when we unpack a client's week for the first time, what we find is they're too busy pouring sand and pebbles in, and things that actually enable growth, there's no time for, and they wonder why their business is plateaued.
It's interesting. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar in the sense of I know I've been working actually closely with Ed and Rebecca Plant from Couples Institute for Couples in Business, and they've got a similar framework around goal setting. So you've got like your annual or your 5-year goals, your annual goals, and then you sort of break that down into monthly things and then weekly things, and it's really interesting because it's kind of like that. I feel like the bigger goals are kind of like the big stones, but then in order to then you put the smaller stones in, which might be your annual or your monthly goals, and then you break that down into the sand, which is the tasks in order to help you get to those things. So it's kind of similar.
Absolutely. And going back to that admin function where most guys are spending, they don't have time to grow their business or they're plateaued is because they're spending all that time doing the admin work. And so that's a pebble. That's sand and pebble stuff. Whereas, and then they're like, I'm like, great, let's get out there and hire an admin person. Oh, we don't have time for that. It's like, okay, yes, it's going to get harder before it gets easier. But if we can invest over the next 6 weeks, if we can invest a couple of hours a week to hire an admin person, which is a rock, the rock is the recruitment. But then you can break that rock down into little bite-sized rocks. And that's what's important is when you're focusing on rocks, it's let's get a seek ad drafted. Let's do phone interviews. Let's do face-to-face interviews. They're all little rocks that can be filtered all through your week. And they're the things that are going to be prioritized most, because unless we have a circuit breaker and course correct business owners from focusing on the things that are still important to comparing to putting them onto the really things that are going to make them unlock growth and get the structures in, nothing's going to change. And that's one of my favorite sayings is, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. And so something's got to change. And the thing that's got to change when you hit the $1 to $3 million mark is you've got to learn self-organizational and self-management skills. And that's about understanding as a business owner, what are your priorities which is going to move the business forward, not just actually getting bogged down in the doing of the business.
Okay, cool. So I suppose basically, like, we're getting close to the end of this episode now, and just to wrap it up, I'd like to leave the listeners or viewers with I suppose a bit of a framework for productivity. So, what would you say are the most important things that they need to do in order to be a master of productivity instead of being a slave to it?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things. Number one, you've got to get rid of that mindset that you got to do it all yourself. Let's eliminate that mindset. Number two is got to learn self-organizational and self-management skills. So what that means is one of the tools that I'd recommend is do a time in motion study and go and see where all your time is going and have that realization within yourself to be able to see what is it that you're actually working on and doing during the day. Then it's about understanding, well, where is all my time going? Then that's going to give the listeners the strategy on what lever to pull to be able to make change. Is it putting a system in? Is it hiring a person? Is it bringing in people around them to be able to do that? And then from there, it's about getting their day structured properly. So another little thing that I'd recommend is, this is one of my favorite books. It's called The One Thing. I would absolutely go out there and recommend your listeners to go and download that book and listen to it. It's actually the book that we give all our clients as in their welcome pack. And I've
got a feeling I've got that book actually on my Apple books, but I don't think I've ever got to it.
Do yourself a favor and listen to it, because what it does is it debunks multitasking. It helps you get focused on really prioritizing the things that actually matter. And that's the important thing for our listeners, is to get to the next level. It's not about doing more. It's about prioritizing the things that matter.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap that one up for now. So for all the listeners out there, as Rob alluded to, there's a couple of resources that are going to be available. You'll be able to get to those from the show notes. So head across to the siteshed.com. You can head to the resources page if you want. They'll also be in there. Rob's got a page where there'll be a few little things that you can get hold of, which will be very helpful to you. Otherwise, that concludes the first part of the growing from $1 to $3 million while improving your family life. Now, that isn't what we called it. We've changed it, haven't we? 1 to 3, how to escape the $1 to $3 million nightmare zone and reclaim your business and personal life series. That was the first part, which was productivity. Be a master of it, not a slave to it. I've been joined by Rob Kropp from Pravar Group. That's pravargroup.com. Again, all those links will be available within the show notes, so you can head across there and get them if you need it. Rob, thank you for your time. We're going to come back for the second part of this conversation where we're going to be talking about performance, leveraging through effective people power. And if any of the listeners want to get hold of you, Rob, they can do so through the website, I guess. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Cool. And Rob is also in the Facebook community, guys. So if you want to head across to the private Facebook group called the Site Shed, then you can get hold of him in there also. All right, let's close this one off and we'll come back with the next episode on pretty shortly. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.